Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello, welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast. My name is Sabrina Love. I'm stepping in as a guest host for a really exciting success story focused around the benefits of immersion training. For those of you who don't know, immersion training is an alternative class format offered by Scrum.org, where the class is broken up into short training sessions over several weeks. The training also extends the learning experience beyond the classroom by leading students to apply what they have learned in their real-life jobs. This format is enhanced by incorporating facilitated reflections for improvement, making the learning experience highly effective and practical. So today we have two guests with us. I'm really excited to talk to Vinayak Joglekar and Ravi Verma. Vinayak is the founder and CEO of Rezoomex, and Ravi is a PST for Scrum.org. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
I'm excited to talk to you both. Is there anything that you wanted to share with our listeners about yourselves before we dive in? Aside from your, a PST and Vinayak, you're a CEO and founder.
I think the one thing that I wanted to share with everyone is what I love about Scrum and Ken Schwaber is the focus on evidence-based management of outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And that calls to me in the context of delivering valuable solutions. And I feel it calls to me in the delivery of valuable learning solutions as well. So what I want to explore in this podcast is how can we eat our own dog food?
Mm-hmm.
How can we practice what we preach and apply the same principles and practices to the delivery of learning that we advocate that our students and clients apply to the delivery of software products or any product for that matter.
Thanks, Ravi.
Yeah. And what I would like to share, in addition to being the CEO of Rezoomex, is I have been training and nurturing talent possibly for 4 decades now. And this is something where I found something that is new, that is refreshing. And had I known this technique earlier, I would have been much better off. But it's never too late to learn, as they say. So
That's true.
it was a good experience for me. And going forward, I think I would increasingly use immersion learning in my journey going forward.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to hear more details behind that story. But that's why we're here. And hopefully our listeners are here to learn that also. Just to set a little bit of context for everybody, Vinayak, your company, Rezoomex, you employed Ravi to help you and your company learn through immersion training. Can you tell us a little bit about your company, what you do, maybe the size of your company, what products you're helping?
Yeah, so we are a startup.
Mm-hmm.
And we are building a gig work marketplace, wherein gig workers primarily from India are entering into smart contracts with employers from the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the nature of our business. So now the reason why we engaged with Ravi was we were having a problem, and that problem was that we were not able to get our development team to understand the requirements that were handed down to them well enough, either because there was a problem of capturing the requirements in the appropriate document or appropriate form, or there was a problem with the process of communicating those requirements to the development team. And overall, there was a bit of slowness in the cycles due to that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the brief background. Our company is we are about 50 people based out of India, and we have 2 here in the US.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like a problem that I hear a lot of companies have. So So something hopefully our listeners can relate to. And just for one more question, I think about your company and your context, are you using Scrum or Agile, and how long have you been?
Yes, so I have been an avid Agilist and a big believer in the Agile Manifesto. So we have been practicing Agile for close to more than a decade, or even more, I think, including this company and my previous company. And we use all the tools, and we practice all the processes and ceremonies. Not that perfect, but we try.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best we can do, I think.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So
yeah,
we try.
yeah.
So as they say, we are more agile than what we were last year, and next year we would be more agile than what we are today.
Beautiful. And that's how did you meet Ravi?
Oh, we date back very long back, right? I mean, Ravi.
Is there a
So it
story
was
there?
2004. 2004, my company was just about starting, and that is my previous company, or was my previous to previous company. So, and Ravi was working with our prospect, and we were hoping that this prospect would be our first customer. And we kind of quit from our previous company, believing
Ravi's giggling.
believing that Ravi's
My
company.
boss, I had nothing to do with this. That my boss would sign the contract.
Yeah, and then we took off from one end to land at the other end, but then Ravi's boss decided, so the carpet was taken off from behind.
The rug was put out from under their feet. So my boss, maybe in the beginning, he had second thoughts for some reason, which we will not go into. But yeah, so then
But then that was the time when we got to know Ravi, and then we have been keeping up. We met in the Agile conference in Dallas, and then last year we had a good meeting because he was one of my customers in my previous companies, where he didn't have a good experience with my company. So in a way, I paid back.
Only a little bit of kismet.
So we are now, all squared up and happy.
So there's it sounds like there's a lot of history between you two, which I do have questions about coming later. But I'm also curious if since we're talking about Vinayak, yours and your teams and your company's experience with this immersion training format that Ravi provided for you guys, were there any other training formats that you had considered, or any other training providers that you had considered? Maybe we don't need to go into names specifically, but how did you land on immersion training with Ravi?
Yeah, so we have been training our people for like more than 2 decades on various training programs, and the way it started was initially it was like pure pedagogy, where you have it was primarily lectures and all that. That's the way training used to be.
Yes, by PowerPoint.
Yeah, PowerPoint kind of presentations.
My boss told me, and I'm
That
just
was
going to sit in the classroom and be present.
Yeah, that was a format in which it started.
Yeah.
And then, it evolved. And the last one we experimented with was a format called workations. So this was during COVID, that we used to take the team out at a scenic location and put them up there and have them spend some days with the trainer, and maybe 2 days, not very long, maybe 2 days with an overnight stay. And then it would be a very informal kind of atmosphere where learning would happen through playing games.
Okay.
So there were a lot of these games, and particularly agile games, where with stuff like paper and you have Lego sets and all that. And that used to be fun. And We also had some games which were based on computer programs and hackathon kind of games.
Yep.
So overall, those vacations were fun, but they were expensive and they were good only, they lasted only in the COVID times.
Yeah.
Post-COVID, we didn't really spend much time doing. So that was the last thing. In between, we had several variations of this, like we had the traditional, what you call as team building kind of exercises, which involved, again, playing games of various types, or doing things with your own hands. Yeah, so these are the various formats we had tried before immersion learning.
Okay. I am curious, so the way that we describe immersion training is, an extended learning format, with some in-between classroom assignments and some facilitated reflections, and that's just kind of the general framework, I guess, for immersion training. I'm curious to understand, very briefly, like at a very high level, like what was the format of immersion training that you two had agreed upon? And was it, was there classroom sessions over multiple months or weeks, or assignments in between? Kind of at a very high level, what was it that you had agreed upon?
So I would tell what my understanding was, and Ravi can chime in. So my understanding of what we did was lasting for more than 2.5 or 3 months, Ravi.
Yeah.
And we used to have a weekly 1.5 hour session, which included sometimes some homework. So if we had half an hour of homework, then the classroom session would be of 1 hour.
Okay.
And if the homework took all of 1.5 hours, we would skip this classroom session for that week. So we spend no more than, so we kind of budgeted 1.5 hours per week.
Okay.
And
Between either classroom or assignment or
yeah,
both.
or both, or either, right? So we did that. And to answer your second question, there was, yes, in between classes, there were exercises. So we had time to, so it was gamified. So we had kind of tournament with 4 teams competing for a prize by doing their homework. So
yeah, we know that works.
Yeah,
we do.
yeah. So that was the format in which this homework was done. And Ravi, you can add if I missed something.
Yeah. So, when we started designing this experience, I met with Vinayak and the chief of HR, the chief people and learning officer, the CTO, who was the boss of all of the learners, and the product owner and myself. And together we started co-creating what is the goal of this learning program, begin with the end in mind. And then I asked Vinayak, what is the budget, the weekly budget? And there were, like most of our listeners will relate, there were major releases which had business implications. So we had to strike a balance between learning a more effective way to build product while not consuming all the time that is needed to build the product. And so Vinayak was very clear. He said, look, I can give you 90 minutes per week, either in-class learning or homework. And then we also, on the roadmap, Vinayak said, well, you know what? We were coming to the US, which is why we are having this podcast now. And so there are some major releases. And so we said, well, you know what? We want the team to be ready for, let's say, a Q2 delivery. So what do we need to do in Q1 to help them get more context and more skillful in backlog refinement, such that when they start implementing this for a Q2 release, we can reduce time to market and minimize waste. So those were the parameters. The weekly allocation is now defined. The duration is kind of defined. It was a 3-month training program. And then we started identifying, okay, what are the prerequisites? So the prerequisites were some high-level product goal, product vision. So we started working with the product owner to create the artifacts, which would be inputs for this training. So we put a lot of puzzle pieces in place before we even started the first class.
Those puzzle pieces sound kind of familiar though.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
you're talking about goals
Product goal.
and boundaries
Yes. Working
and
agreement.
budgets and
Yes.
time boxes
Yes.
and lots of similar things to what we talk about in
Yes.
Scrum.
In Scrum. Yes.
So learning is a first class citizen for you
Yes.
in the
Yeah,
same way
yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah.
next to product delivery, you're
Yeah.
setting specific budgeted time aside,
Yeah.
intent on learning and reaching a goal.
Yeah. And this was very unusual. So, I
Mhm.
advocate the same principles
Mhm.
to all of my clients. And Vinayak has been the first client who actually gave me the time to do this planning, because most other clients have been very transactional. Hey, just go and deliver a PSM1 course and we'll be transformed.
Yeah.
So I was both happy and confused that why is he
Yeah.
why is he so unique? So I asked him, why are you spending? So first of all, thank you, but why are you helping me take care of your money? He said, because it's my money.
Yeah.
Because he's the CEO of the company. And perhaps, I don't know if that is one of the differentiators, because other clients are probably playing with somebody else's money.
Mhm.
And maybe there is not as much skin in the game.
Could be. Yeah.
Or who knows, but it was so refreshing.
Yeah, there's actually coming back. I alluded to earlier. I was going to come back to this. There's quite a bit of history between you two,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that that's necessarily a requirement or a necessity to have that amount of history between you and between both of you and setting up a training experience like this. But I think what's important about that relationship is I'm assuming that y'all have a amount of trust between you.
Possible. Yeah.
And the ability to be candid with each other, maybe that
Could
might
be
be
a
really
factor.
important to setting up. I think you had told me once, Ravi, you had mentioned that it's kind of like like an alliance between you two, and how you have set up this learning
Yeah.
experience together, very intentionally together, where you have skin in the game, Vinayak, and Ravi, it's the trust factor of reaching a goal together.
So I had one more ulterior motive is to make sure that my people will really benefit from the training in which I'm investing.
Yeah.
If I don't have a buy-in there, and if I don't demonstrate that, my team would not do what they did, right? So that's why I was like interested, and I made sure that I participated in the 4-way alliance that we built. In fact, 5-way alliance that we built.
Yeah.
With me, my CTO, my CHRO, my product owner, and Ravi.
And the learners. Yeah.
Yeah. They're demonstrating your buy-in to the learners.
Right.
Has a
Yeah.
massive impact.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. Yeah.
It matters because
Yeah.
finally they want to see if there is a buy-in at the topmost level.
Yeah.
You're not just writing a check.
And as our listeners are listening to this and trying to figure out, is the context in which I want to create or deliver an immersion learning program, is this context a good fit? Some criteria, there are some ground conditions which might be compatible or conducive to maximizing ROI. One thing that I saw in Vinayak, which I haven't seen in many of my other clients, is openness to change. So he was skeptical because he had some concerns. Like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I think he gave me space to say, well, who knows, maybe it'll work. And we created some accountability checkpoints to say, look, we don't know if it's going to work or not, but we will stay in touch. And ultimately, our true north is to be good stewards of precious time and money. And this is what we are starting with, but we will know things that we cannot know right now. And if new wisdom emerges, we'll adjust. And if needed, we'll end it.
Did you have a dedicated time throughout this arrangement where you came back to retrospect on how the learning experience itself was going?
Original in the design, I was hoping to have, my intent was a monthly retrospective, but unfortunately, I could not do that. So we had our first
We had three, I think. We had 3 retrospectives in the total span of 3 months, wherein we had the same set of initial 4 people who were a part of the alliance. We used to meet periodically and give feedback as to how we were doing. So I would say that anything more frequent than
Yeah,
that
way
was
too
not
much.
really needed.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're retrospecting every
maybe
6 hours of investment,
Yeah,
if I did the math.
every
Yeah,
6 hours.
Yeah.
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 And they were seeing patterns. So we created a channel called Learning Stewards, which I stole shamelessly from Scrum.org.
You can
So it
have it,
was
it's okay.
so it was Vinayak, the CTO, the product owner, and the chief HR officer. And then they would, because they saw things on the ground that I didn't see in Pune. And so then they would talk to each other, they would give me feedback. One of the examples of the adjustments we made as part of the retrospective was like, I think it was jobs to be done, right? We want to have, can we integrate jobs to be done so people can associate features with personas and personas jobs to be done. So we made adjustments to both the content and also we created a roadmap. So we made lots of changes because there were blind spots which were illuminated through the retros.
Yeah. I do want to dive into this a little bit because I don't want it to seem like a learning experience like this is very easy for people. It's not, I think, meant to be easy. It takes a lot of commitment from everybody to make something like this useful and valuable for everybody. But just if we can touch on for a second some of the challenges that you both faced or your teams faced, because what I think I just heard was that the teams are mostly based in Pune,
Yeah.
Pune, and Ravi, you're based in
Dallas,
Texas. So
Yeah.
how is that? How is
Yeah.
that experience for you both being not co-located together?
Yeah, so see, we had an upfront agreement with the team even before we got started. I think one full session was spent on getting that agreement from the team that they would follow certain rules or certain code of conduct, one of which was if they were not willing to undergo the training, they would drop off right away. So that was the first one, and we got the commitment from all of them that they were willing to spend 1.5 hours every week for the next few weeks. The second one was they would keep their video on.
Yeah,
Right. So
that's a tough one virtually. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but then all of them agreed and they stuck to it. And the third one was that they would do the homework that is given to them. And all of them did that with some effort in terms of making it, gamifying it, which Ravi will talk about.
Yeah, I would
So
love to
he
hear
he
about
he
that.
he has a way to make people they incentivize people to do what they're supposed to do. So I would not say it was difficult. I mean,
Okay.
at least to me, it didn't seem difficult. I don't know about Ravi with that. He knows better.
Yeah, one of the choices I had given to Vinayak was we have PSTs near Pune. And I offered, hey, we could have a PST who will come to your office and have face-to-face training in your time zone. Nobody has to stay late.
Yeah.
But Vinayak, my recollection, you can correct me, is one of the things Vinayak said was he wanted a trainer who has the organizational context and the relationships with the learners. So I had just come back from Pune last year and I had gotten to know the learners one-on-one. I knew their hobbies. I knew which part of the country they had grown up in. And I knew what example I could use or what kind of a joke I could crack to connect with which person.
Yeah.
So how this might be related or relevant to our listeners is psychological safety is necessary for learning. And doesn't matter how great a trainer is, if people don't feel safe, they don't have the freedom to be vulnerable, there may be a ceiling to the learning that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So putting an emphasis on that human connection between the learner and the teacher, that is an important parameter that people should consider when designing the immersion learning program and who delivers it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was one of the factors that helped us reduce what might otherwise have been difficult, where the trainer is in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
And all the learners are in India and they're staying up late away from family, right when maybe it's dinner time. So,
Sure.
So
pick your trade-offs.
Yeah, we had to pick the poison.
Yeah.
This was the least of all evils that we picked.
Yeah, yeah. Was that maybe your most difficult challenge in this whole experience?
The biggest challenge I would say is the Indian culture, and two challenges. One is the Indian culture. We are a hierarchical culture, and in our culture, it has been drilled into our head, at least in my generation, that you don't talk back or you don't challenge someone who is elder to you, or like there is a authority system.
Mhm.
And it's only in America that I realized it's okay to challenge your boss. It need not mean a sign. Need not be a sign of disrespect. It's not mutinous, and
Mhm.
it doesn't mean it's negative conflict. I had to unlearn decades of training in India where challenging people was a sign of disrespect. So that was one challenge.
Mhm.
The second biggest challenge was a lot of technical people like me are introverted developers. As you know, I am extremely socially awkward. I love people. I want to interact with people, but I just don't have the
Maybe
natural
we're the
talent.
same flavor of
Maybe
socially
we
awkward
are.
because we get along
Yeah.
great.
So when I became a trainer and I would ask a question, nobody would say anything
Mhm.
because they're all socially awkward people. So one of the things I learned in Scrum.org is, okay, you give them the anonymity of breakout session
Mhm.
where they free up because there's no authority figure. It's all a bunch of
Yeah.
peers. They speak up. So creating psychological safety where people can come up with ideas without feeling exposed, and also giving a technique where they can provide feedback without feeling it's disrespectful. So most of the techniques I used in this training were learned from Scrum.org. So I used the perfection game, which I learned from Ralph Jochum.
Mhm.
So perfection game, I felt provided someone with an Indian culture to provide constructive feedback without feeling concerned that it's going to be looked at as critical
Sure.
or destructive.
Mhm.
So the cultural challenge was the biggest one for me.
Yeah, so one of the things that our people, they're naturally, you can say, laconic, or they, in India, they say that the deeper is your thought process and the deeper is your level of knowledge, the more silent you are.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
So you will speak less and do more kind of thing is the culture, right?
Mhm.
Now, in an environment where you're supposed to give feedback and open up, uh, it doesn't work, right? I mean, you need to speak up. Unless you speak up, you won't be understood. So this was a challenge, as Ravi said, and there were a few people who couldn't overcome this challenge initially. But as Ravi said, they did open up eventually in the breakout sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that made it easy was the language. So English is the second language for most of us.
Mhm.
And Ravi made it openly clear that they could speak in any language.
Sure.
So that made the difference because some of them were not able to communicate as well in English as in the local language. So when that avenue was opened up, even those people who had challenge with speaking English, they also opened up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think the common thread is psychological safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People have great ideas, but if they are scared, there are so many barriers that they have to jump through. Will someone make fun of me?
Mhm.
Will I not come across as an articulate person? Will they think I went to a not very expensive school, right? Will my boss or tech lead feel that I am disrespectful because I shared an idea which was contradictory, right?
Right.
So many and very few ideas will survive all of the attacks of all of these hurdles.
Mhm.
So as a designer of a learning experience, I had to look back at all the mistakes I made and I had to remove these hurdles, and then the magic happened.
Yeah. So speaking of magic, let's pivot because I feel like we've talked about challenges a lot, but I would love to hear from both of you. Like, if there was one shining moment that you remember that just kind of is like ingrained in your brain when you think about this experience, what is it?
Yeah. So for me, the shining moment was there was a person who was the junior most person, right? And even he hadn't spoken a word since I don't even know what he sounds like, right?
Yeah.
He never
Okay.
spoke
Yeah.
even a word, right? And then there were these breakout sessions, and Ravi used to ask one person from each group to come back and summarize what was discussed in their breakout. And one day, this person was, I won't say the name, but he just said that, okay, I'll summarize. And he just did a good job of it. And yeah, so that was the shining moment of this entire journey for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
You see somebody grow like that in real life as it's happening and you recognize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, the shining moment was, again, for confidentiality, I won't give the name, but there was this one lady joins 5 or 10 minutes before, camera is on, honoring all of the agreements. And when I give an exercise, one of the things I learned from Sharon Bowman's training from the back of the room is, before you send people off for an exercise, check for understanding. So I would say, okay, who might be able to, how many of you got it? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Who might be willing to recap what the exercise is? But over time, they became so comfortable that they started, she started challenging me. I'm sorry, this doesn't make sense. Or, can you please explain? When people started challenging me in a blunt way, I felt so happy. Because for me, that means the gears are turning. They don't have to massage what they are trying to say. It doesn't have to clear 4 levels of editing.
Yeah.
They just stop. Because she spoke, she verbalized the concern that many other people were having. And I think people were probably watching, how does he behave when someone talks to him?
Yeah,
And when they saw that I was
yeah.
encouraging, then more people, like the first penguin jumps, everybody
Yeah.
starts jumping. So for me, when they talk to me directly, bluntly, I don't understand. Can you please explain?
Yeah.
I feel so happy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 1,000 times better than them wasting time for 10 or 15
Thinking,
minutes. And
yeah.
I think I understood this. I
And
think
then
he
you come
meant
back.
this.
And they come back and then the exercise, no, this is not what I am.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was happy. That makes me so happy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what would you two say is your biggest learning from this experience? If you had to do it over again, either with with each other or with somebody else, if you're gonna recommend this learning experience to somebody else, maybe that's a better question. If you're gonna recommend this learning experience to somebody else, what would you say is, the biggest thing that you've learned from this type of learning? Maybe not from the content of the learning itself, but this experience in this learning format.
Yeah. So doing instead of listening and sitting in one place makes all the difference, is what I think is the difference between immersion learning and other ways of learning. So we found that people were doing something with their hands. They were constantly, so there was not a dull moment, as I would say. So constantly people were doing something, or they were either preparing for the breakout, or they had come back and they were summarizing what happened in the breakout. So I think that was something which was unique as an experience in this immersion learning.
And maybe I can add my perspective. If I got a do-over, so here's one challenge we found. People would say, so let's imagine we taught them product vision, or we taught them wildly important goal, measurable product goal. Then we taught them personas and empathy map and so on. So some people were saying, Ravi, I don't understand how this connects to my daily job. If I got a do-over, what I would say is, every time they applied a technique which was high level. So here, if you look at the agile planning onion, the daily work is being done at the innermost layer of the onion, which is the day-to-day task, and the second layer, which is the PBI, and the third layer, which is the sprint goal. The curriculum was such that we were starting at the outermost layer of the onion. Where we started with product vision, product goal, and there was a chasm. So if I got a do-over, what I would do is, every time I taught them a technique and they applied it, then I would give them homework to say, now, which of the teams can connect the dots between the innermost layers of the onion and the outermost, and I would gamify it.
Yeah.
Because I'm a slow learner, it took me like 2 months to finally hear them and come up with a technique. So I gamified it. The last session that we did, I gave them the fill in the blank section in Confluence, where I told them to fill out all the layers of the onion from the daily task to the PBI, sprint goal, release goal, and so on. And then I said, whichever team, and you should be able to relay this in 90 seconds. And whichever team does the most compelling job, they win the award. That's when I think it started connecting, where the knowledge which they had acquired, suddenly they started connecting it to their day-to-day job. So that's a do-over.
That's and actually what I would like to ask, I think, wrap-up question maybe as we kind of come to a close. What have you noticed, Vinayak, in the difference in your team's behavior since they have gone through immersion training? Like, how has the immersion training experience affected their product delivery or their ability to work together?
Yeah, so first of all, we have started using immersion training internally without really planning for it, because now when we have meetings, in that we have breakout sessions, and we do have people coming back and summarizing. So the method itself of immersion training, we may not be as perfect as Ravi is, but inadvertently we have started doing it, right? So this is one of the biggest benefits that I think it has led to us. Also, there were techniques which Ravi used during the training. So there was one technique called the perfection game. So in this training, we used it quite often. But even outside the training, I see people playing the perfection game on many things.
It's so easy to remember. The first thing I think of was, so I guess for our listeners who don't know what the perfection game is, maybe like a like really quick, Ravi, would you give a really quick, what is it?
So whenever someone asks you for feedback, you start by saying what you love about it, and then you rate whatever artifact you're giving feedback on a scale of 0 to 10 based on the extent to which you can perfect or improve that idea. So you see you're in a sprint review, you see a demo, you rate that particular increment on a scale of 0 to 10. If you rate it as a 6 out of 10, then you tell the team, here are some concrete improvements you could make that would bump up my score from a 6 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. So it starts with appreciation. Hey, here's what I love about your sprint review. And you can't be a seagull who flies in, craps on everything and flies off. You have to give something constructive. So it gives people an opportunity to feel appreciated and also get constructive improvements.
Do you play it as if I rated a 6 out of 10, then I owe you 4 constructive feedback points to make it a 10?
No, it can be 1.
Okay.
No, that's a mistake I made, and then Mark Norman taught me that's a misinterpretation.
I've been making that mistake.
Yeah, so I made a mistake. Yeah.
Okay.
So Mark taught me that no, it can be 1 improvement.
Okay.
The number of improvements doesn't matter.
Okay.
And if someone looks at an artifact and they don't think it's a 10 out of 10, but they don't have an ability to give a constructive suggestion to make it a 10 out of 10, you either got to say 10 out of 10 or you just got to pass.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's so aside from the I've been mistaking the number of feedback points to give, it is a really simple, easy to remember technique that I it's like second nature now. You use it everywhere for everything.
And if our listeners are interested, Ralph Jochum has a Scrum.org webinar, Scrum Pulse webinar on core protocols in Scrum. So I would recommend you watch that. He's got 3 techniques. Really good.
Definitely. Coming back to Vinayak's story and yours, Ravi, about Rezoomex. Is there a noticeable difference that you've seen in the quality of the products that your teams are delivering since immersion training?
It's hard to say because for measuring the before and after period, they didn't exactly coincide with releases or sprints. So if you had asked me this question about how did this release go as compared to the previous release, or how did this sprint go with respect to the previous sprint, I can answer that question.
Oh yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. So, every sprint we are improving the quality, and as the program was progressing, we saw that we made some changes, right? I mean, to change to the processes that we had based on the discussions we had internally, again, using the techniques that we just discussed.
Yeah.
And those changes paid off. And now we are having certain other backlog items or certain other bottlenecks, which we will improve upon. But we are not having the same problem again.
Yeah.
So is what I would say. We have overcome the problems that we had previously.
Higher order problems.
There are now higher order problems, which, and as our experience is, you'll always have some bottleneck.
Right? Yeah, there's
So,
always room for improvement.
Always a room for improvement.
Yeah.
So there, I think I have seen positive improvement that has definitely happened in terms of quality and participation, collaboration, and overall, what you can say, the vibes that I get from the team are good. It will improve. It will result into definite improvements in terms of the outcomes. That remains to be seen.
And one story I just remembered. So one of the exercises was creating a proto persona, which I learned in PSU.
Yeah.
And I think there was one which about empathy map, which I learned in PSM2. So we asked the team, there were 4 teams, we gamified it. We built 4 cross-functional teams. And we said, go and create a proto persona for an important person who you need to serve through your product. Then go and talk to at least one human being and validate your assumption. So of the 4 teams, there was one team who actually went and spoke to a recruiter, I think. They actually, I think, took a video of that conversation, came back, they refined their persona based on the conversation, and they posted their video on Confluence, our team, so everybody could learn from it. For me, we improved the quality of individuals and interactions, because now people saw how you can diligently apply what is taught in class to improve your business knowledge and tie it back to product delivery. And that one person did more good to the company than I ever did, because now people can follow in his footsteps, and we rewarded that. So the carrot was lunch with Vinayak.
Yeah.
So my hope is that team wins the award for that game, and they get to have lunch with the CEO and they get to brag to everybody else. But that's how culture has changed. Because now, many years later, people will say, hey, remember that guy did this and his team got to have lunch with Vinayak. That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
So for me, that...
You don't tell people to change, you leave them to change.
Yeah. They follow their role models. The best teacher is the peer. So our job is just to get the heck out of the way.
Yeah. Actually, parting words, I guess, is as we wrap up, and last question. I think I said last question 2 questions ago, and I feel like we can talk about this for like 4 more hours and a couple more drinks. We're not drinking, by the way.
Yeah.
Not yet. But last parting words, anything that you want to make sure that you let our listeners know about if they're considering a learning experience like this?
I would say this is not something that you experiment with as a one-time thing and then stop doing it. It's an ongoing thing. So it needs to be inculcated, and you need to absorb it and make it a part of your company's culture. It's not something that you learn and you implement and use it occasionally. The immersion learning has to happen continually, and it's not something that should be restricted to a classroom session. It should be something that becomes a part and parcel of day-to-day interactions.
I think what I would say is, you said something beautifully. You said learning is a first-class citizen. I feel that in our industry, one of the reasons that the agile industry has lost the respect of business people is that we expect a trainer to come in and change not only human habits, but organizational habits, which have been in place for decades.
Yeah.
Over 1 or 2 days, you fly
Yeah.
in, you train, fly out.
Yeah.
And that shows such massive hubris
Mhm.
and just a profound misunderstanding of human behavior and organizational behavior. So this approach is only going to work in companies that understand how much caring has to be put in, caring and feeding has to be put in to change human and organizational behavior. If someone has a transactional view of training, that you fly in, deliver PSM1, fly out, and the whole company is transformed, this format is not a good fit for that kind of client.
Mhm.
It is only good for a client who understands that changing human behavior or enabling change in human behavior takes a lot of caring and feeding, who has humility and curiosity and willing to try despite skepticism. So this is not I don't think this is a mass market product.
Mhm.
This is a niche product for a very specific kind of buyer.
Mhm.
Those are my closing thoughts.
Yeah. Well, it's a fascinating story. I mean, I'm very close to it. I love hearing stories about immersion training. It's and I will keep asking you all for more. It's been really awesome to talk to you guys and hear your experiences, and I hope to hear more about in the coming months how it's been going. So thank you, Vinayak and Ravi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been awesome to have you guys, and I hope our listeners will tune back in for more stories in the future.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.